In Core 3 today, we finally learned what radians are. Now, radians are just another form of measurement for an angle, much like degrees. Okay, so today we're looking at the difference between radians and degrees and how to transfer between them. So we want to know how to go from radians to degrees and from degrees to radians. Now, radians comes from how many times the radius goes around a circle. So if you think about circumference is 2 pi r, that means it's 2 pi times the radius to go all the way around a circle. So what that means is that if we have a circle, then to go around that circle takes 2 pi radians. Now, 2 pi radians is equivalent to the idea of 360 degrees to go around a circle. So 2 pi and 360 are equivalent when it comes to the angular movement around a circle. Now, that is for one rotation or revolution. Now what we want to look at is the difference in how to convert from them. So to go from degrees to radians, let's take a look at that. Now I'm going to pick a random degree, one that I don't have memorized. So let's think. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. For some reason it zoomed out. Alright, so let's go for 54 degrees worked well in class. We want to know how many radians that takes. Now, the first thing I want to figure out is how many revolutions I've gone if I've gone 54 degrees. So what I do is I take 54 and put it over 360. Reduce this. Let's see, divide the top and bottom by 2. I get 27 over 180. Divide top and bottom by 9. I get 3 over 20. Now that's reduced. 3/20 is the rotations. Now I take 320 and multiply it by how many radians it takes to get around a circle. Now, multiplying with a fraction, I multiply straight across the top. 3 times 2 is 6. I have 6 pi over 20. Reduce that by divide by 2. Divide by 2, I get 3 pi over 10. And that is my final answer, 3 pi over 10 radians. Now, if this works, then both of those should give me the same exact decimal in sine, cosine, tangent when I'm in the correct mode. So I'm going to start in degree mode and do sine of 54 degrees. I get 0.809. I'm going to switch to radian mode and do the same thing, but now sine of 3 pi over 10, and I get the same thing. That means those two are equivalent. Now, to go the other way, it's just reversing the order of the steps I did and switching around some of the numbers. So let's go from radians back to degrees. Let's do the same thing since we know what it equals. 3 pi over 10 and turn it into 54 degrees. Let's separate this a little bit. Now, first thing I'm going to do, similar to over here I divided by the total number of degrees it takes for a complete circle. This time, the total radians it takes for a complete circle is 2 pi. Now, I have a fraction over a whole number, so a fraction on top of a fraction. Looks kind of messed up. I'm going to turn the bottom into a fraction so I can write it this way. 3 pi over 10 divided by 2 pi over 1. Now to divide a fraction, I do the first fraction stays the same, multiply and then flip over the other one. And I get 3 pi over 20 pi. Now my pi's cancel out, I get 3 over 20, which is the same thing I had over here, 3 over 20 rotations. Now I take that, 3 over 20, multiply it by the total number of degrees by 360, and I get 1080 over 20. 1080 divided by 20 is 54 degrees. So it works backwards and forwards. Now, what I wanted everyone to try and complete was this table out of the book. This is a resource table, a cheat sheet, so that in the future you don't have to do so many calculations. Now, a certain one of these are pretty easy to do. If it's 0 revolutions and 0 degrees, it's 0 radians. If it's a full revolution, it's 1 revolution and 2 pi. So those are easy to fill in. Now, in between, we have to do those calculations. So this first one, 30 degrees, turn it into radians. So I take 30, put it over 360, reduce, I get 3 over 36, divide by 3, I get 1 over 12. 1 over 12 is my revolutions. I do 1 over 12 times 2 pi, and I get 2 pi over 12, which reduces to pi over 6. That's my radians. Pretty simple. Radians to degrees. Pi over 4 over 2 pi. So it's going to be pi over 4 divided by 2 pi over 1. Pi over 4 times 1 over 2 pi turns into pi over 8 pi. Pi's cancel, I get 1/8 revolution. 1/8 times 360 is 360 over 8. So 360 divided by 8 is 45. 45 degrees. So it goes pretty quickly. Now, calculator can do this in one step. It can look pretty tricky, but get used to the calculator. I can do this entire step up to the rotations in one step, and then up to the final degree in the next. So let's look at this one. Pi over 3. I know I'm going to do pi over 3 divided by 2 pi. So I'm going to, in two parentheses, do pi over 3. Close the parentheses, divide by 2 pi. Then I'm going to tell it, oops, I need that in parentheses. Then I'm going to tell it I want a fraction. 1/6. Now, I do that times 360, and once again, just in case, I want a fraction. 60 degrees. Nice trick these calculators can do for us. If I want this one, 2 pi over 3, all I have to do is do the same exact thing, but instead, I'm going to put a 2 right there. Whoops, I put a z. 2 pi over 3. 1/3 rotation. Times 360 with fraction, 120. So this can go pretty quickly. I'm just going to go ahead and start filling in the rest. Let's start with radians. Next one is just pi, which is a 1/2 rotation, times 360 to fraction, 180. Next one, 5 pi over 4. I'm going to insert that. 5 pi over 4. I get 5/8 rotation times 360 to a fraction, 225. Last one's 11 pi over 6. So insert 11, change that to a 6. I get 11/12 rotation times 360. I get 330 degrees. Look how easy that is with the calculator. Now I'm going to go back and do the degrees to radians the same way. 90 divided by 360 total degrees to a fraction, 1/4. Times, now if I try and put in 2 pi, it's going to get messed up. That's the only time this gets a little messed up. So what I'm going to do is do times 2 to a fraction. It's 1/2, so it's pi over 2. Next one. 135 to a fraction, 3/8 times 2 fraction, 3/4, so that's 3 pi over 4. 150 over 360, 5/12 times 2 to fraction, 5/6, so 5 pi over 6. Next one, 210, I get 7/12 times 2 to a fraction, I get 7 pi over 6. Next one, 240, whoops, I messed that up. 240 is just 2/3 times 2 to a fraction, 4 pi over 3. Next one, 270, 3/4 times 2 to a fraction, 3 pi over 2. Next one, 300, 5/6 times 2 to a fraction, 5 pi over 3. And last one, 315, 7/8 rotation times 2 to a fraction, 7 pi over 4. And that's it. There's the table. They're supposed to have it in your notes, so you can use as a reference.